This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Howdy, there he is, locked and loaded and ready to go. How you feeling, my man? You feeling good?
Doing great, man. Excited. I'll be on vacation starting next week. I'm taking the girls over to Universal Studios, and so I haven't been there in, like, I don't know, man, 10, 15 years it feels like. Gonna ride some roller coasters, some new stuff that they got. My girls are all excited, so it'll be a fun trip.
Okay, nice. Is it what, where they got the wine festival going on or something at Epcot? You're going to be sneaking over? Is that what's going on?
They got the Mardi Gras party in Universal, so I don't know. We'll get
there you go.
We'll have some entertainment for the adults, man, for sure.
Okay, all right, there you go. So you dump the kids somewhere and then you go party, right? Is that what you're doing?
That's what we do. We leave them with the older kids. That's what we do.
There we
go. Tell the older kids, give them some money and say, hey, go eat or something.
Dude, I remember when I was like, I would go to Disney with my mom, and I would take a buddy or something, and and this is how the world is different. You're like 10 or 12, and then you're off on your own running around Disney World.
Yeah.
And then you would never do that nowadays. You would
never
allow your 10 or 12-year-old to go run around Disney World, and Disney World's pretty safe, but still, you would never do it nowadays. Whereas I remember as a 10 or 12-year-old running around Disney World with my buddies alone. No parents. Like the mothers just went off together and they went riding, and then the kids went off riding now, and whatever. They give you a couple bucks so you could go buy a Coke or ice cream or whatever, and then you'd hook up at whatever time. Because there were no cell phones. There were no beepers.
Right.
Nothing, bro. It was, okay, we're going to meet here at the Tomorrowland, whatever, at 4 p.m., okay? You got to be here. And, you got to be there at 4 p.m., whatever, and meet. That's the way it was. But I think about it nowadays, because I just tell you, you're going to just drop off the kids. Brother, you can't do any of that kind of stuff nowadays. It's crazy.
You can't, man. It's crazy. I took my daughter last weekend to a birthday party, and they rented a indoor swimming facility. And I remember the days your parents, they would drop me off at Hot Wheels or Rainbow Playhouse or something like that, and they would leave. And now you see all the parents are staying to watch their kids in the pool, and even they got lifeguards. They got all kinds of. It's a world you can't trust anymore.
Yeah, no, and you can't trust the kids too. On top of all
exactly.
that. They're actually a little bit more wild than even we were. You know what I mean? It was just, I don't know, if we got in trouble, it was mischievous stuff that was just, minor, nothing, But nowadays it's, some of this crazy stuff going on, man. All right, you gonna watch tonight against Drake?
Yeah, I'll watch. I got my fingers crossed for the Canes. They told us not to pick them, so I didn't. I'm not picking them to go very far with a banged up Norchad Omier. If he's unable to go or is severely hampered by that ankle, I would think that Miami's chances of advancing deep in this tournament are probably out the window. But
Duke killed them without him. They had no answer for the two big guys, none whatsoever. Those guys did whatever the hell they wanted in that game.
Yeah, and fortunately for Miami, I mean, this Drake team, they're not one of those teams that necessarily plays that way, but
right,
down the road, Indiana, which could be the next opponent. I mean, those are quality Big Ten caliber opponents that have size, that have really good guards, and they're going to be problematic. So I think, tonight, I hope Miami gets by, because I don't want to see them get bounced in the first round, not after the season they had. But I just don't think it's in the cards this year because of the injury to Norchad.
Yeah, no, I know it sucks. And, you get these kind of injuries like the Heat a couple years ago. You're in the bubble and you're playing at such an incredible level and the chemistry with the team. And then here goes the Bam and Goran injuries, and it just derailed, that finals that we're going to sit here for the rest of our lives and say, what if Bam and Goran were healthy?
Yep.
Could they have beaten the Lakers? You know what I mean? And I know we're not thinking about winning the entire thing. We're just talking about Drake here. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Without Omier. But it's just one of those that you just hate the timing. The last year, the Dolphins, last game of the regular season against the Jets, Brandon Shell goes down with the injury. And so you lose your right tackle as you go into the playoff game against the Bills. And it's like now you've got to shuffle things around for a playoff game. Your line was already injury riddled, and you found a guy middle of the season that was really doing a good job for you in Brandon Shell, and you lose him right before, the playoff game. I mean, timing sometimes is like the freaking worst, dude. And when Omir went down, you were like, oh, this is just, they can't replace him.
Yep.
That's the problem.
Health and depth, man. Those are the two things that ultimately separate teams in the playoffs in any sport. You have somebody go down, it just totally screws your whole thing. And if you're not a really deep program, that's why like people always say like, oh man, this 12-team playoff, it's going to be great, right? You're going to have all these other teams now that have a chance to win. What do you think is going to happen when TCU tries to go on a run now? Now they don't just have to win 2 games to win a national championship. Beating Michigan and Georgia back to back, but they'd have to beat 3 or 4 of those teams on their way to the like the health. They're not going to get very far. That's why the Alabamas, the Ohio States, and the dominant programs that have all that depth are going to continue to win championships because that's what's going to show up in the playoff.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. All right, so you spoke with Lance Guidry. Talk to me a little bit about what you learned in that conversation, something that Canes fans should be excited about.
Well, I talked to a lot of Lance's former players, and Bruce Feldman actually is the one who spoke with Lance about his defense before he got hired. And, the piece that we wrote last month on him was just, showing people what this guy, how smart this dude is. I mean, he's been under a lot of different coaches and learned a lot from different coaches over the many years that he's been doing it. And he always had to sort of overachieve with his defenses. He never really had, the big dominant defensive tackles or the big linebackers or the big cornerbacks. This last team that he had at Marshall, he had 2 big corners, but that was sort of a rarity for him. And yet the guy's always overachieved, and he's really good on third down, the stuff that he comes up with. He's got really good third down packages. You look at Marshall's defense last year. They were super effective, number 1 in the country, one of the best in the last 20 years, statistically. So, they beat Notre Dame on the road. That's a huge win for a program like Marshall. Doesn't have that kind of talent. So, I think Lance is the kind of coach who, at Miami, given the opportunity with better athletes and some more talented players, I think he's the kind of guy who can put himself in position in 2 or 3 years to be a head coach at the Power 5 level, because somebody's gonna ride with this guy. Somebody's gonna say, hey, you know what? He's overachieved everywhere he's been. He fixed Miami's defense. They weren't very good last year. I think they're going to be better with him calling the shots. And I see that kind of potential. He's already been a head coach in the past. He wasn't McNeese State, but I mean, getting an opportunity to be at a bigger level, I think that's the kind of coach he is.
Who's the guy that's going to benefit the most on the team with him? After you talk with players, you got the information, obviously, that your coworker got. Who's the player that you think is going to, like, for me, like I look at the safety for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm brain farting. What's the name of our guy for the safety for the Dolphins? Holland. Jesus. For me, Holland is going to benefit the most from Fangio's defense. I think he's going to have a Pro Bowl season and have 6, 7, 8 interceptions next year because of the way that system is designed. That it's kind of more of a bend don't break type defense, and it forces you to be perfect. I think Holland, and especially now you added Ramsey. Oh my God, it's just like the quarterback's gonna be forced to work the middle of the field, and now you're coming right into his hands. So to me, Holland is the guy that I think is going to benefit a lot from Fangio's defense. Who's the guy you think on the Canes defense that might benefit the most after you've gone into all of this?
Well, I mean, look, Cam Kitchens already last year had a phenomenal season. Led the ACC with 6 interceptions. He was All-American. He's going to be working hand in hand with Guidry. So I think from an individual perspective, nobody's going to probably improve more than that guy. But I'm really interested to see what he does with James Williams, because James Williams is an absolute athletic freak at 6'5", with the length and the long arms that he has. That's the guy I want to see who he has the biggest influence on, because I think he's got to figure out a way to utilize that guy's talents the best. And to me, I've been saying this about James Williams since he was in high school, since I saw him as a junior. I think he's much better at the line of scrimmage than he is in open space. I know nobody's going to tell him, hey, don't play safety, because they don't want him to get in the transfer portal and leave. But in my mind, I've been saying for a long time, I think he's an outside linebacker. He's an Isaiah Simmons type. You think of Isaiah Simmons from a couple years ago at Clemson and went in the first round of the NFL draft. A guy who played all over the field at Clemson. I think James has to be closer to the line of scrimmage. And I think at times I want to see him pass rush. I want to see him use those long arms to bat passes and create turnovers. I think he's the most unique tool in Miami's defense. So I want to see what he does with him, where he lines him up on the field, what he does with him after this summer. And hopefully he gets a chance to convince him that, hey, you know what, big guy, you want to make a lot of money in the NFL. You want to be a first-round pick. Don't try to arm tackle and hit guys with your shoulder and lean in with the way that you have in the past. You have too many tools to waste it. And to utilize them the best. So to me, I think those two guys from an individual perspective, but as a position group, from talking to a few of his former players, I think the defensive line, the way that he utilizes those guys, he lets the two edge rushers stand up and blitz. It looks like only 2 down linemen, but it's really 4. And just some of the packages and stunts and things that they do in his defense. I think, the defensive ends, you could see a guy like Jafari Harvey, who's got a whole lot of talent and just hasn't put up a whole lot of numbers, but we've seen flashes. We saw the pick 6 that he had at North Carolina a couple of years ago. We've seen him bat passes, and I think the defensive linemen, the Leonard Taylors, the Jafari Harveys, I think those guys are probably between Guidry and Jason Taylor. Those are the kind of guys you're going to see take off.
On the other side of the ball, wide receiver, need a number 1. What's the word? What's the word?
Well, I mean, look, they're really looking in the transfer portal for help. I think that's something that they're not going to stop doing. But you're only as good as your options, right? You're only as good as the guys that are out there and available. And so we know the way the transfer portal works. I'm not accusing Miami of tampering, but the way it works nowadays is real simple. Guys are going to go through spring football. They're going to have an opportunity at the end of spring to reevaluate if this is the best place for them. And I think Miami's going to make it very, very known that they want somebody good to jump in the portal, and they'll happily pay him in NIL, whatever it takes to get him down here. In the event that doesn't happen, I think a kid like Colby Young, who really came on strong, I think, over the last 6 games of the season, I think he's probably going to be your number 1 guy. Physically, he looks really, really impressive. I think he looks faster coming in and out of his cuts than he did a year ago. And then you have Jacoby George, who is really talented, but is he all there mentally? Is he going to show up and play every single week the way that he needs to and perform the way that he needs to? He's a talented player. He's got the skills. It's what's upstairs and whether or not he has the confidence to show up every week and be the same guy. And I think, those 2 guys, I would say, in terms of returning veterans. Obviously, you have Xavier Restrepo, who's going to catch a bunch of balls because he's best friends with Tyler Van Dyke and he's the slot guy. But in terms of in terms of stretching the field,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
that's Colby Young's job in my mind, and Jacoby George's job. And I don't know that they're going to get there. And I know, I'll put it this way: I know Miami's looking. They made no secret about that. They want to find help in the transfer portal, and we'll see whether or not they get there.
Is there a disgruntled star out there in college football right now in the news?
I know for a fact they tried to convince Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers to come to Miami. They tried with both those guys. They tried with the Tank kid from Houston who played, for Miami's offensive coordinator last year, Shannon Dawson, the kid who led Houston in receiving. So they certainly had backdoor conversations to try to convince guys to come here. It just didn't work. And I think, the one thing you have to remember for a lot of these dudes is if they're in a situation where they already thrived, right? Where they already thrived, to get them to come here and play for Tyler Van Dyke, etc. They want to see him stretch the field. So this spring game is almost like, to me, if I'm Miami, I'm trying to showcase Tyler Van Dyke throwing the ball down the field as much as possible. And making sure those highlights are out there and showing, hey, look, this is our mentality. We're not, what you saw with Josh Gaddis last year, erase that from your memory banks.
Okay.
Because there's a new sheriff in town. So
Yeah.
I think they're going to really try to sell that this spring.
Yeah, it's like Mike McDaniel, right? If you watch that offense, you're like, yeah, no, I want to be a part of that. And I'm sure guys down the line are going to want to, no, I want to be a part of that offense because that'll get me some numbers and that'll get my name out there. So, yeah, it definitely can't be that offense from last year. Oh, my God, that was terrible. All right,
Yeah.
what are you working on over at the Athletic before your vacation?
Well, I have a whole series on recruiting and where each of the Power 5 programs get their players from. A breakdown from the last 6 years, a lot of analysis. If you're interested in that kind of stuff and how schools are recruiting, how much they're using the transfer portal now, it's obviously changed quite a bit. And this is sort of a deep dive into that subject. ACC, Big 10, Big 12, all of those things. Obviously realignment is another conversation. Miami fans are among the many upset with the contract that the ACC is tied in through with its TV rights through 2036. Everybody's worried that Miami and everybody in the ACC is going to fall behind the Big 10 and SEC with those big TV contracts that they have. Last night I got a phone call from somebody at Miami who's pretty disgruntled and with Jim Phillips and the ACC and the way they're sort of operating now.
Well,
I know.
what can they do? It's a contract already. They can't.
Yeah, I think they want to. I think they want a little bit more participation. They want Jim Phillips to open, the floor to talking to some people in athletic departments. The feedback I've gotten and things I've heard from other people in the conference is Phillips is going to school presidents for a lot of these conversations, and I think a lot of athletic directors and sports people want to be involved in these conversations more than they are right now. And in terms of making more money for the conference and coming up with ideas that work. School presidents are academics. Oh, we know that, right? That's what they're focused on. Yes, they're in charge of schools and budgets and whatnot. But the reality is the people who Jim Phillips needs to be having these conversations with are sports leaders at each of these universities so that they can put their heads together and figure out a way to help get this done. Right now, I think a lot of the conversation is centered for the ACC around getting the Pac-12 involved with ACC Network. Pac-12 is obviously looking for their own TV deal. The ACC is looking for sort of a kickoff classic partner, scheduling some games against the Pac-12, potentially, bringing some teams in and having, sort of a West Coast, East Coast type of deal. Those are all sort of internal conversations and thoughts that have been discussed. But I
Wait a
think,
minute. Hold on a second. What's left in the Pac-12 that you want that's sexy?
well, you have
That if UCLA and USC are gone, what else is left in the Pac-12 that you would say, oh, this is going to bring us ratings. This is going to bring us crowds. Clemson versus Utah. You're still going out to see Clemson, not Utah, no matter what. And
No, I don't disagree with you. I think the concept is, like I said, it's been wide ranging from setting up a series where every year maybe the first game of the season is an ACC Pac-12 type of matchup. You get a Miami Oregon game, or you get a Washington Clemson game, or a Washington Florida State game, or to try to bring that back. I mean, a lot of those teams don't see each other anymore, right? Like we don't have a whole lot of ACC Pac-12 matchups,
Yeah.
but the point is to get more TV viewers. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's about the map, right? It's where can we get more TV viewers? The Big 12 is obviously very interested in adding Colorado and Arizona. It feels like if they add the Phoenix and Denver markets, that works for the Big 12. I know it doesn't make sense for the ACC and Pac-12 geographically, right? And history-wise. But if there's a way to create more revenue, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out what kind of games could we schedule? What could we do? Let's discuss this, because there really is nothing else. The SEC and Big 10 are set. They are going to potentially become the AFC and NFC of college football. And if you're not in one of those conferences, you're screwed. You're not going to have the money to pay big time assistant coaches. All the best coaches are going to be going to those conferences. And ultimately, we haven't evolved to this yet. But I think it's going to evolve to those are the conferences that are going to be paying the players the most once the NCAA is sort of phased out of the system. So I just think the ACC is very nervous. They're very scared about its situation. There's a lot of member schools. I was told yesterday there's 7 schools that want to blow up the contract, that want to
Yeah,
get
but
it
the
over.
problem is you won't be able to. You're locked in. It's not. To me, it sounds like a whole bunch of people panicking about something they have no control over. You already signed the deal. They're not going to give you more money. They're not going to
No,
tamper.
ESPN has no incentive. To me, the only thing that makes sense with it is in 2030, when some of these other contracts die, okay, when the other conferences have to start renewing their own TV deals for the second time, right? Because the SEC and Pac and Big Ten just signed new deals, but they were smart enough to do it through 2030 and 2031 and 2032. When we get to that point, that's when schools like Miami have to hope that the Big Ten and or SEC call them and say, hey, we want to expand again. Let's figure out a way to go into your market. I think for Miami, what makes the most sense is the Big Ten. From an academic perspective, from a geographic perspective, the Big Ten recruits Florida more than any other state of all the conference. Like literally in the whole country. Florida feeds the Big Ten more than any other state. And so it makes sense for them to come and get a Miami and Florida State and bring them into the conference so that they have a footprint in Florida. So for Miami and FSU, I think that's the best bet long term. But the point is, there are administrators at a lot of ACC schools right now who are upset because they feel like Jim Phillips isn't utilizing their brains enough and is sort of keeping the conversations with just the school presidents. And they want to get involved in trying to figure out ways to make more money.
All right. Follow him on Twitter at Manny_Navarro and catch his work at The Athletic. Better yet, subscribe like I and many others do. That way you're on top of everything. Manny, as always, thank you for taking some time, my man. Appreciate it. We will catch up next week. Have a great weekend and enjoy the vacay, too, with the family. Oh,
We'll do, brother. Thank you.
You got it, baby. There
All
you
right.
go. Manny Navarro. Remember, when you order over $99 at caneswear.com, you will get free shipping. Better yet, you should go down to 2511 South University Drive in Davie. All right, check it out, and you're going to love that. That place is heaven for a Canes fan. It's heaven for an Inter-Miami fan, a Miami Heat fan, Miami Dolphins, Miami Marlins. They've got it all. They're Florida Panthers. They've got gear for all your teams. But when it comes to Canes, man, they've got practically anything and everything with the Canes logo on it. So go to caneswear.com. If you can't visit it personally, go online and check it out. And they ship right away. Jeff and the folks, I mean, I'm telling you, they work hard as hell to ship what you order probably on the same day. It's really nuts. You're going to realize, you're going to go, wow, I got this stuff really quickly. And that's because they do a great job at Caneswear. So tell them that Big O sent you when you go by there personally or shop online at caneswear.com.
This is the